Show me something that you spent way too much money on, but don't regret it at all because it's freaking sick.
Your unread bookshelf is not a personality trait, it's a warehouse of dead trees, industrial glue, chemical dyes, shipping emission, and the wasted ambition disguised as intellectual sophistication. Somewhere along the way, loving books stopped being about reading them and started becoming displaying them. Touring book halls, color coordinated shelves, and endless shopping spree have transformed literature into decor. The rise of book haul culture has turned reading into a form of consumer performance. Across social media platforms, massive stack of newly purchased books are celebrated as symbol of intelligence, taste, and aspiration. Owning book has become aesthetically fashionable, often detached from the act of actually engaging with their content. Entire online community normalize buying dozens, sometimes hundreds of books, rather than they can realistically even read them, creating personal libraries built more for accumulation than intellectual curiosity. What appears harmless on the surface carries significant environmental consequences beneath it. The published industry depends heavily on paper manufacturing, ink production, chemical, adhesive, plastic limitation, and carbon-intensive shipping network. Every unread book represents resource extracted, processed, transported, and eventually wasted. While reading itself can be deeply enriching and environmental, preferably to any form of entertainment. This discussion is not an attack on book, reading, or personal libraries. It's a critique of excessive consumerism disguised as culture, romanticize endless accumulation, prevents meaningful conversation about sustainability, mindful ownership, and the difference between valued knowledge and merely purchasing for appearance. By examining the environmental impacts of collecting books that remain unread, we can begin to question whether modern library culture is nurturing intellectual growth or simply repackaging hoarding as sophistication. Let's talk about the rebranding of consumerism as intelligence. Book haul culture has successfully done something genius from a marketing perspective. It transforms shopping into a moral virtue. Unlike fast fashion or excessive makeup spending, which are increasingly criticized to overconsumption, buying book is still socially framed as normal, intellectual or productivity, even when the book are never read. Person showing 60 unread novels receive admiration instead of concern because books carry cultural prestige. The act of purchasing literature become confused with the act of gaining knowledge. Entire online space now reward accumulation over engagement, encouraging people to constantly buy more books in order to appear curious, educated, deep, or academically ready. This is where overconsumption hides in plain sight. The aesthetic presentation of bookshelf, color-coordinated covers, overflowing TR card, luxury edition, sprayed edges, collector hand covers, mirrors the exact psychology behind makeup restore culture and fashion hauls. The product itself becomes secondary to the visual performance of the ownership. Reading becomes content creation, book becomes the prompts. What makes this especially dangerous is that the consumerism is now intellectualized. People are not merely sold products, they are sold an identity. Buying books creates the illusion of self-improvement, even if the book remains untouched for years. The publishing industry, influencers, and algorithm-driven social media platform all benefit from maintaining this cycle of aspirational purchasing. And because books are associated with education, criticism of this behavior is often dismissed as anti-reading or anti-intellectualism. But questioning excessive consumption is not an attack to literature. It's just questioning why modern culture encourages endless acquisition instead of meaningful engagement. Owning knowledge is not the same as practicing it. Social media has an extraordinary ability to make excess look beautiful. In the world of book culture, overconsumption is no longer presented as clutter or even waste. It is carefully curated into an aspirational aesthetic, overflowing shelves, stacked night lamps, those rolling TR cards, and endless delivery box are framed as cozy, intellectual, or emotionally comforting rather than environmental excessive. The problem is not simply that people buy books. The problem is that platforms increasingly rewards the visual spectacle of accumulation itself. A single well-loved novel rarely goes viral, but touring halls, luxury collector edition, rainbow organized shares, and 200 unread books confession video perform exceptionally well because social media algorithm prioritize abundance, novelty, and visual stimulation. The more book display, the more impressive the identities appear. Consumption becomes content. This mirrors the same pattern seen in beauty, fashion, and fragrance culture, where personal identity become inseparable from purchasing behavior. The bookshelf is no longer just storage for literature, it becomes branding, a curated backdrop designed to communicate intelligence, sensitivity, creativity, or even academic sophistication. What makes this especially troubling is how waste become romanticized through aesthetic, excessive paper, consumption, unnecessary duplicates, addiction, plastic packaging, and carbon heavy shipping are usually softened by those warm lighting, soft music, and cozy addicting style. Environmental impact disappear beneath this visual comfort. The aesthetic hides the reality because aesthetically pleasing waste is still waste. A person owning hundreds of untouched books may appear cultured online, but materially, these books still require trees, water, ink, abrasive, energy, warehouse storage, and transportation to produce them. Many will remain unread for years, donated, unused, or eventually discarded entirely. Yet, social media rarely shows that side of cycle because waste is easier to normalize when it's visually beautiful. The damage of aestheticized consumerism is that this disconnect people from consequences. Let's talk about the psychology weight of owning more than we can consume. One of the most uncomfortable truths about overconsumption is that the clutter is not always physical first. Sometimes it is emotional. Unread book did not just occupy your shelf, they occupy your mental space. Every untouched spine can quietly become a reminder of unfinished goal. You spent your money buying this book, abandon aspiration, and the pressure to become the more intelligent, more productive, and cultural version of yourself. This is where book hoarding becomes deeply connected to the psychology of the aspirational consumerism. People are not often buying books because of who they are now, but the fantasy of who they hope to become someday. The growing stack represents imagined future productivity, the future reader, the future intellectual, the future self of unlimited time, focus, and discipline. But when consumption outpaces actual engagement, the collection slowly transforms from inspiration into psychological burden. Instead of comfort, the shelves begin to create guilt. Unread book become visual evidence of excess, proof that purchasing has replaced participation. And yet, social media encourage people to keep adding more, convincing them that the solution to feeling intellectual inadequate is another haul, another collector edition, another trip to the bookstore. The cycle mirrors the same emotional patterns seen in beauty and fashion overconsumption. Buying makeup for fantasy version of yourself, buying clothes for a lifestyle you do not actually live, buying perfume for identity you want to embody, and now buying books for knowledge you may never realistically absorb. Environmental consequences become even more unsettling when viewed through this lens because these books are not simply products being used and enjoyed. Many become dormant objects with massive production footprints, but minimal functional purpose. Trees are being cut down, waste is consumed, and emission are generated, and packaging waste accumulates for items that might spend years untouched. Decluttering then becomes more like organizing a room. It becomes confronting the gap between aspiration and reality. Letting go of unread book can feel emotionally difficult because people often feel they are abandoning the idolized version of themselves attached to the books. But encouraging the emotional attachment is important. Sustainability is not only about reducing waste materially, it's also about reducing the compulsive need of constantly consume identities. Owning fewer books does not make someone less intelligent. Reading with intention matter more than collecting endlessly. Books are not the problem. The problem is what consumer culture has turned them into. Somewhere along the way, reading stopped being enough. Now people are encouraged to constantly purchase, display, curate, and perform intellectualism through endless accumulation. The modern bookshelf has increasingly become less about engagement with ideas and more about constructing an identity online. And because books carry cultural prestige, this form of consumerism often escape the criticism directed at beauty, fashion, and even lifestyle consumerism. But environmentally, the planet does not distinguish between aesthetic waste and ordinary waste. At its core, the conversation is not about shaming people for loving books. It's about questioning why modern culture keeps teaching us that becoming a better version of ourselves is what we purchase. Knowledge is not absorbed through ownership. Intelligence is not measured by shelf size, and self-improvement cannot be built through compulsive, consumption. Maybe the issue was never loving book too much. Maybe the issue is that consumer culture convinced us collecting knowledge looks the same as pursuing it. So maybe the goal is not building libraries we never touch. Maybe it is slowing down enough to actually experience the idea we keep buying. One meaningful book fully read will always matter more than 100 untouched ones displayed for validation. And maybe real intellectual growth is not measured by how much we owe, but how deeply we engage in what we already have. Thank you so much for sticking with me in this video. If you enjoy videos on overconsumption, underconsumption, influencer culture, and since influencers has normalized that shouldn't have, subscribe to this channel, turn on your post notifications so that you get notified anytime I upload video. Share this video to a friend who might want this. I am Blessing and I will see you in the next video.